we're going to go ahead and start on the main frame, so get all your bags for the main frame around. This is where you're going to need to know what servos you're going to go with, because there's two sets of holes on the lower bearing block. Now the Lynx servos, they take the upper holes, the holes for the narrower span. So go ahead and take your upper bearing block, OXY up. Now you are not Loctiting at this time. Because we'll be chewing up the main shaft when we get done with all of this. Just installing it to a snug fit. All the way down and back off. Your lower bearing block will be going like I was showing you. We're going to go into the higher holes. Now this back one's going to have to come out because I got to put the canopy mount on, but it's easier doing it this way. Now we want the high edge up top. You want the big hole right here, you want to go wrap up higher for the frame. And I'm in the top hole from the bottom here. Now back thread it until you feel it click. That way you know it's hooked in the It was hooked in the threads of the bearing block, not just in carbon fiber. Still plenty loose. Now, the factory edition doesn't have the hooks because it's a 3D printed battery tray. The factory ones will have the hooks. You'll have to, hook it into there to mount it on. Yeah, these small screws don't. I can't hook them on my driver like I can the bigger ones. Again, remember, we're just putting all this stuff on loose. Installing the rollers on your boom clamp. Just lay the pin with the roller on it over top the grooves that it slides in. Make sure it's even so you don't split out either end. And then just kind of push down like that with it supported on the back side on something soft so you don't break the pins. Just push it in. Once you do both sides, you can go ahead and assemble it. And what I like to do is I like to put my thumb in and kind of catch the top roller and bottom roller. Kind of push my thumb in there while I'm supporting it. And it kind of makes sure that, you're using the pressure to, push it in good. Push it in like that. Make sure they're in there nice and straight. It's ready to go. Okay, now we're gonna go ahead and put our boom clamp on that we built. Our motor mount. Okay, we're going to prep the motor now. Alright, I'm going with the You know, the link's 1611. What you want to do is you want to prep the main shaft by sanding it. That way it's roughed up. Now what I like to do is, these are my alcohol wipes. I like to clean it with alcohol to get all the dust off from sanding it. Make sure it dries before I go any further. Pick your pinion by, you know, which one you're going to use, because per your head speed. Now you want to use high strength. You want to use high strength Loctite. Put it inside the pinion. Put some on the shaft. I just put it toward the top because it's going to compress down and roll down on the shaft. You don't want it goobering out all over your motor windings. Because I preset this to 11 centimeters or millimeters. So preset 11 millimeters, and I'm right there. Now I'll take the other end. Clean out anything that went into the teeth there. Now they recommend that you wait 10 hours before you fly. I'm going to wait probably 10 hours before I install it, but yeah, wait 10 hours before you fly. And I will be mounting the motor on the motor mount. Go ahead and pick the screws that you need by the motor that you could be installing. Now, for this, I put the Loctite on the screw. Make sure it, it's not hitting the windings anywhere. I wait with Loctite on the motor. Until you're done with the gear mesh. Mount it all the way forward, that way when you come to mount your gear in here, it makes it a little easier. Again, don't tighten them all the way up. Next would be putting the other side on. Now if you have a newer build where it has the fingers on the battery tray, you might want to run all your electronics before, at this point, as much as you can, especially for the motor and speed controller. Again, I'm using the upper holes because I'm using the Lynx servos. Now you're taking the other canopy mount you made. Again, the gap toward the top, the 2 holes toward the bottom. Now once we get it all trued up with a main shaft, we'll be going through and we'll be taking these screws out one at a time and remembering which, and keeping track of which ones we do. We'll take them out one at a time and we'll go ahead and we'll Loctite them. If you have the time and you're doing this build all at once, you can put your Loctite in there and then just not torque the screws down. But if you don't know if you're going to be able to finish the build, you might want to wait with Loctite and then go through them one at a time at the end. That way you don't have to worry about, re-Loctiting them and redoing everything. Alright, next we're going to do the anti-rotation pin. Now, my suggestion on this is put it on, but put it on loose to make it easier for putting the swash plate on. It'll go on with the screws to the left side of the helicopter. Put one in first. Yeah, I would wait with the Loctite until you Loctite the frame. That way you can manipulate the anti-rotation pin so that you can get the swash plate on easier. There, just leave them loose for now. Alright, now, I just assembled this, nothing is tight. Here's the test. Now we're going to put the main shaft in. Well, that tells me I can tighten everything up. Now you want to tighten it up a little at a time and then keep constantly checking the main shaft. I like to kind of go across the corner. Okay, everything's tightened up. Shaft drop's fine. Now what I do, there's 4 main bearing block ones here. I'll crisscross. I'll take them out one at a time and crisscross and Loctite them. Again, these are cleaned with alcohol earlier. I'll do these 2 and then I'll go back and I'll double check my shaft. Now I'll do the other 2. Now you got to remember, you don't have to really crank these screws in super hard either, because you also have the servos mounted on these bearing blocks to assist in holding it and bracing it. Now we can build it like this because we can get the servo screws real easy. Now go to the other side. crisscross pattern, and then check the shaft. And the other two. You can pretty much tell which screws you're doing. Excuse me. You can pretty much tell which screws you're doing because you'll have a little bit of Loctite on the frame, giving you that little bit of shine. And then once you're all done, then you can just go through and wipe it clean if you want. Generally, I don't get a whole lot of Loctite on the frame, so just enough I can kind of sort of tell which one I already did. We're done with that for now. We're done with that. Now we'll use our little hook again. Man, butter. Now here's something you gotta pay attention to too. If you're using the small servos, there's this little black hub that goes on top of the main gear. That's the spacer to make sure that the belt alignment stays correct. Slide it on in there. Now, the main shaft or the main gear, I should have showed you earlier. The main gear has a countersunk that the head sits down inside, and then there's a flat side down here. You want to put it in on the round side so that the head sits in that countersunk. There isn't a nut for this, so if you watch, you can see the head countersink in. See how it sinks in? That's what you want. You want that screw to come flush on the other end. You don't want it to stick out past this. You want it to be flush. And everything's going right. Then what you do is you push up on this gear and tighten down this collar. Tight threads. There's no top or bottom on that collar. I'm pulling down on this collar and pushing up on the gear. And I'm pushing in hard on this collar while I'm screwing on that set screw. That way I don't strip it out. We check down underneath here. I'll kind of zoom in on it if I can, but you check down in here for the belt tension. And there's a hole on the side for pushing in on it to check the tension. For those of you that have an OXY, this does like a little looser belt than the OXY. The OXY that really likes a real tight belt. I'm gonna go ahead and tighten this side up, because then I'll draw the other side into it. Now the manual shows how to test it and everything, and it doesn't take much deflection at all. It's like maybe a millimeter of a deflection. With just average pressure. Maybe even a little bit too tight, but a little bit of tight like that little bit extra, I'm gonna kind of leave it alone and see what it does, and check it after the first few flights. Because being a new belt, it's obviously gonna stretch. But this is where you test it all the time for tension. I'm gonna go ahead and Loctite these now. I'll start on this side. Yeah, generally when I work on my axes, I'll loosen one side up for loose tension of the belt, because this is a solid piece that goes through the box. So I'll only loosen one side up and re-thread lock one side, and I'll leave one side tight. These you can do a little more than just two finger, but you don't want to crank them down. You know, they're still small screws, and once you break the thread lock loose, you know, you want to be able to screw them out without stripping the head off. Now, there's a few things that you really want to pay attention to on this build. One is this roller right here, because you want it. It rides on collars, and you want to make sure that it's on the collars. You want to pay attention to making sure that you don't over torque bolts. You want to make sure that you look at all the little tips and tricks on the manual itself. You know, make sure that you put that front little divider in there. Make sure you put that in the right way. Like I said, you know, I went through and I cleaned all my bolts and screws with alcohol before. This is my third time putting this together. You know, I did dry builds, in order to kind of learn some of these tips and tricks I'm passing on. Still proper deflection. The manual will give you a picture of the deflection, that way you know that you have it right. Okay, next will be the head, and that has its own video also, so go ahead and follow the manual for head. But this is the main frame here. So far so good. That's nice and free. It rolls beautiful. Belt's lined up perfect because of the washer up there. Now if you run the bigger servos, you will not use that black little spacer to keep the belt at the same height, because the bearing block will come down lower to match the main gear, so you won't need that spacer. So now up here is where you'll be putting your flybar unit if you want, and then down here will be the you can mount your Bluetooth if you have the old style Bluetooth, or you can mount your flybar unit down here. So, but this is pretty much the optimum spot. Myself, I might put it down here. Okay, onward to the head.